Thank you for joining me. Sorry I'm a few minutes late today. It's about 5:05, so not too bad, but I had a few things I had to get done. Happy Friday to everyone. Friday, February 22nd. We'll get started here in just a second with today's date text, and then at the end of the date text video, I'll give an update on tomorrow's CW Jaw Talk show. So, again, I thank all of you who joined me so early in the morning. I know it's not easy, regardless of where you are, although maybe for some of you it's a little bit easier. But for those of you who are like me, up very early, it's a good time at least to get things done, but still, sometimes your brain isn't always working right as early. So for me, it's a good way to get started. It helps activate my mind and get my focus on the right things. And so I do enjoy these date texts with you, and I look forward to concluding the letter to the Hebrews and working our way right through the rest of the New Testament. So let's get right to today's text, and then we'll make a few comments, a brief application, talk a little bit about this Saturday's show, and we'll be on our way. Okay, so we're in the 11th chapter of the letter to the Hebrews, and I'm going to read verses 36 through 40. And then we'll comment on several points that are made, make an application. And then, as I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about tomorrow's show. Okay, so starting in verse 36, we read, "Still others received a trial involving public humiliations and beatings. Still others received imprisonments, including a guard." And remember, I should say, if you've been reading these texts with me, you know we're talking about examples of faith. People of old, at least at this time in the first century, who were remembered in the biblical writings or through oral tradition in terms of their acts, the way that they showed faith based on the best available reasons that they had. So we've talked about people like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and many others, including Rahab the prostitute in the biblical account of the sacking of the city of Jericho, for which we have significant archaeological evidence. You can see the link in yesterday's video if you want more on that. But it's been the 11th chapter has been basically going over these examples of faith. So that's what he's referring to when he's talking about these actions, the things they had to go through. So let's pick it up in verse 37. He says they were killed with stones. They were cut in pieces as they faced death by killing with a sword. They traveled about in sheepskins and in goatskins. They experienced times of need, severe difficulties, mistreatments. Verse 38, the world was not worthy of these people as they wandered about in deserts, in mountains, in caves, and in holes of the earth. Verse 39, but all these people, though they testified through faith, did not receive the promise. This is because God provided something better for us beforehand, that these others might not be perfected without us. I have my cat over here. There's a little playing around, Joji. So, let's go back through this for a moment here. So we know that there are examples. It's not an example that's mentioned in the 11th chapter of Hebrews because it's more contemporary with the author of Hebrews, and that is John the Baptist, whom people thought was unusual, right? I mean, he lived in the wilderness. He ate insects and honey. He wore animal skins in ways that weren't common to most people. So he didn't seem like, you're a normal guy in the sense that people of this world consider others normal. But that doesn't make a difference. If he was doing Jah's will and following the biblical teachings according to what he promised, then we shouldn't always look at these superficial things, the way people look, dress, or act. We should look at, their act, but we should look at the things they're trying to accomplish. Because that's what's most important. That's what shows what kind of person you really are. What are you getting up every day trying to accomplish? Right there, that tells you what kind of person you are. You can change, or maybe you like the way you are and you want to maintain it. That's fine. But you should always ask yourself, are you doing the things that when you reach the end of your life, you are going to look back on without regret. We'll all have some regrets, but for the most part, are you doing the things that you really believe later in life will make you happy? Maybe they make you a little bit happy now, but look ahead. It's the most difficult thing for many people to do, is to stop what you're doing and look ahead to see what's coming. That's the best way to try to moderate your behavior now, if what you can see is coming is going to result from the things you're doing. Now, these others whom it is describing, who went through these very difficult periods of time, we're all going to have to face difficult periods of time. And one way or the other, whether we have to go through a public trial or execution, or whether we have to face extreme difficulties, mistreatments, living in caves, one way or the other, we're going to have to face that day where Jah says, you've done enough in this world. Your life now belongs to me again. Figuratively speaking, of course. But our spirit is what keeps us alive, and we did not give that to ourselves. And there's nothing on this earth. There's no spirit factory. The spirit comes from the spirit. That's why when we die, the only thing left is our body, and we don't know why. There's something gone, something missing, and that's the spirit. So one way or the other, we're going to have to give up our spirit again, unless there's some unique time in which we live, or circumstance when Jah, or Jesus, like Jah with Enoch, gathers up the living with him. But those are potential futures. We should focus on what is likely going to happen based on everything that's happened before us, and that is, we're in a time of judgment, and we're likely going to have to give our life. In one way or the other, whether we live a long time and pass away with our family, or we stand up for Jah and we give a witness, we testify about our faith, the things we've come to believe, and if people don't like it, well, they're going to see. One way or the other, they're going to find out. And if they can't see it now, everyone's day is coming. There's no way out. So you can tell yourself whatever you want to make yourself feel better about your life now, but if you're just fooling yourself, if you're not like these people who stood up during extreme difficulty in public humiliations, beatings, imprisonment, you know, are you going to do that for humans on the earth who take advantage of other people? Or are you going to stand up for the one who gave life to people and who's trying to help people like a loving father would? It's not a hard question. It's a difficult choice because we're in the world and we're weak creatures. We see all these physical things. We want this, we want that. Again, you can take nothing with you. The pharaohs wanted this and that and everything else they could get. It's all still there, or it's been robbed and remade. The past shows us our future. If we're careful enough to think about the things other people did that are also there for us now, but we can see the ending because of the way it happened to them. But still, some people, and myself too, I forget at times. We're all imperfect. We need reminders. That's why we day text. But it's not easy. So even if you know something, right? Everybody knows pretty much the same things. It's just more difficult or less difficult depending on our circumstance or our desire. So we have to cultivate a desire which can overcome our circumstances. We can change our circumstances easier than our desire. The desire is what will motivate you to change your circumstances. So you have to have in place the desire for what it is you're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, we all have smaller desires that we want to do and this and that, but I'm talking about long term. What is your plan? Not just for now, but in the future. And if you can't see beyond your own death, well, I still suggest you do the best you can and help as many people. But I would encourage you also to look beyond your own death into the future, which is what Jah promises all of us. And it's not a promise that has no reasons. We have evidence from our past, all throughout human history, that shows the activities of Jah, the things he did. So this is not a blind faith. It's based on real evidence, scientific evidence that leads us to the conclusion God exists, because life has to be eternal and intelligent based on life existing now and in the way it exists. And then throughout history we identify that life as Jah, and then his people, his son, the one who came to show us the way to Jah. And how hard is that? All we have to do is acknowledge Jah to give him praise for the things we enjoy every single day. And the way we have an example to do that in Jesus, because if you read about his life and teachings, again, he associated with all kinds of people to help them, not to glorify himself. He let the Father do that. And what is our principle? Treating others the way we want to be treated? What's so wrong with that? That seems like a pretty good principle to me. So the people in our past who went through these difficulties believed these three things, primarily above and beyond all else. Even according to the very Jewish lawyer who questioned Jesus, he asked him, "Teacher, what is the greatest command?" And Jesus said back to him, "How do you read?" They knew. He said right there, love Jah, your God, with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and treat your neighbor as yourself. And of course, we know that the fulfillment of the promises that Jah made involved Jesus. And that's it. That's our three things. It's really simple. We empower other people to do what they have to do, because you may have to do some of these things. You may have to endure public humiliation, difficulties, severe difficulties, people who don't like you. Why? Because you're doing things they wish they could do. I doubt it's genuinely because they're so obsessed with hurting other people. They just want you to do it so badly and you don't do it, so they hate you. There may be a little bit of that, as crazy as it seems. But whatever it is, you cannot change everybody. So you may have to endure the difficulties that come with either their ignorance or their evil desire. Jah watches everything, and then he's going to reward you, and he's going to punish them, just like everybody else who's done those things has been punished to an extreme. You know, a lot of these anti-Christian people, they're very quick to disrespect Jesus, promote Judas, all these things. You know what? I'd encourage you to look at the account of Judas. Read the account that describes how Judas felt after he betrayed Jesus. Read the account of what happened to Judas because of what he did. Then we'll see how much you want to promote Judas. Then we'll see how much you want to be like Judas. And if that's what you truly desire, may Jah give it to you. Times 2, since you like it so much. So that's for the evil people to consider. Those who promote these just disgusting ways, terrible things. I see it all the time on TV. Music is pretty much an abomination nowadays. I mean, I like stuff. I even like certain songs that, hey, we live in the world, right? But I mean, there's a level of production taking place in the entertainment world today that's just garbage. I mean, it's a sack of trash. I can't even watch most movies or shows anymore because they're just garbage. They promote the worst things of the earth. By contrast, I want you to promote the best things in the earth. And leave these people alone. If they don't want to go your way, move on. You got to let them go. People, when you come across people and they're not prepared to live like this for you, if you're around people who, when you have to go through these difficulties, these extreme trials, where you may have to give your life, if you're not around people who are going to help you and build you up, you move on. You immediately get away from those people and find others who are going to assist you. Pray to Jah. He'll send a bunch of rocks to you if he has to. Talking rocks. That's based on an account. My point is, do not let anybody hold you back. You already have enough that you have to deal with going forward. Remember what Jesus told even Peter, who was trying to help him feel better about the difficulties he was going to face. Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." That's how committed he was. He's not messing around. There's no reduction of loyalty. Okay? Anyone who's trying to get you to be less loyal, when you have to go forward and face these things, you move right past them. You cut them out of your life immediately. And if they want to be a part of your life and help you with what you're doing, great. If not, look at what you're facing. Look at the difficulties all of these people of faith had to face. You think they got through all this with people there holding them back. Even Job's wife, who tried to hold him back and cause him to be depressed about his circumstance, he moved right past her. You never hear about her again in that account. So we have to move forward. We cannot let, whether it's Peter, whether it's our wife, anybody, if they're not there to help you become a better person, if you have to stay with them because of a commitment you made, so be it. If not, move on. Find people who are going to help you, because this is what's coming. These are the difficulties that if you have not already faced, you're going to. But that's okay. You're going to face a difficulty anyway. Whether it's a difficulty that comes through life and your own choices that are apart from Jah, or a difficulty that comes because you chose to serve Jah. Either way. So which way is going to have the better reward in the future for you? So not doing your own way. How has that benefited anybody? The only way is the Jah way. And that's why we talk about it. So I thank you all for joining me. I got a little excited there, because I see these difficulties in these people, these servants of Jah, and I know what we go through sometimes today. And then I think of the people who stand in our way, who do not help us at all, and who just sit there and do nothing. They're the worst off. They're the ones who knew what they should have been doing, who saw other people doing what they should be doing, but didn't do anything. So they have no one to blame but themselves, because really it doesn't require a whole lot just to be helpful, encouraging, and to do the three things that we were made to do. So that's what we're here for. In any case, I thank you all for joining me for today's text. Let's talk a little bit about this Saturday show. Don't forget this, though. You're going to need all the support and strength of mind you can get. And even if you become weak, remember that's when you're most powerful. 2 Corinthians 12:10. But you're not going to be able to survive these things with people around you constantly pulling you down, constantly being negative towards your faith. The second you start to see that, move them right out of your life. They're not in there for a good purpose anyway. So think of Jesus. Get behind me. You don't have to speak like that. Remember, he was the Son of God, and he was dealing with an impending torture and death in a way where his faith had to be as strong as possible. It could tolerate nothing. We may have to tolerate a few more things from people, unless we're at that point in our life where we cannot do anything but focus on what's right in front of us, because we're going to be facing these extreme difficulties. Try to watch the people you're around. Doesn't matter if they're friends, family, whoever. Remember Jesus to Peter. Remember Job's wife to Job. You cannot face these difficulties with people constantly in your way. So they're either going to help you or you move them out of your way. That's my advice to you based on today's text, because I know what this takes, most of it, the extreme difficulties. And it cannot be done with people who are not there to support you. You may have to be all alone. But that's why we have all of these examples of other people who are all alone. And they did it because they had faith. Okay, let's talk about Saturday's show. Ancient Aliens and Christians, Part 1. That's what we're going to talk about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight several clips from the Ancient Aliens episode. From Season 1 episodes. Not too many, maybe 3 to 5 clips that show progressively key parts of that first season that will then allow me to tie together some of the essential points they make. And I'm going to be comparing the things they show, much of which relates to biblical history and archaeology. And then I'm going to be relating it to Judeo-Christian beliefs. So you'll see often in these Ancient Alien episodes, they'll quote or refer to the Bible, or they'll use the biblical accounts because they know they're reliable. But then they won't follow the application all the way through. They'll use it to a point to kind of then as a jumping point off onto what they want to talk about that totally is contradicted by the rest of the account that they just cited. So on the one hand, You know, these shows, they do a good job of presenting some biblical teachings and history, and they do a good job on, in some cases, of coupling that with archaeology. But in other respects, or as they are discussing some of those points well, they then veer off and jump into this other theory of ancient aliens that is not consistent with the very records they're citing that showed there were quote unquote ancient aliens. It's the description of, it's how they describe ancient aliens that, as you'll see, we would take issue with, not the fact that there are pre-existing aliens or that there were ancient aliens or other beings not from this earth that visit us. We believe that. It's just what do you mean by ancient alien? Do you mean a spiritual being? Do you mean a physical being who's just like a superhuman? So we'll talk about their views in those regards, compare them with some of the accounts they actually cite and the rest of the accounts. You know, they'll sometimes reference the name Yahweh, which is not Jah's name. It's not the biblical God's name. And they really rarely talk about the name of God in the way that it is presented in the Bible. So there are limitations to the show and things they talk about, even when it comes to the Bible and accurate history. So, for example, they highlight the flood and the evidence of the flood, but they have a hard time, as you'll see, understanding. You know, they'll cite the biblical and other accounts about the flood and how higher beings like Jah brought the flood. But then they'll talk about more natural type processes like the Ice Age in ways that suggest more of a geologic process apart from the control of alien beings. They sort of imply that, but the disconnect between the account that they cite and then their explanation for where all the water went, or the time when the flood occurred and that the Ice Age began, you're going to find that that's where they really veer off from accurate biblical and other history, and then get more into, they sort of hybridize biblical and accurate history with evolutionary science. And so I'm going to explain or show where they do that and how and why they're not consistent with the facts that they're citing, and how their explanation doesn't make sense according to the evidence they present. And that's basically what I'm going to do in the first show. It's going to be a multi-part show, so that's why it's Ancient Aliens and Christians, or Christians and Ancient Aliens, Part 1. We'll start the show at 8:30 tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. So I look forward to joining you all at that time. If you do have questions, of course, you can post them, send me a message, and we'll do our best to talk about them. Try to keep it on the topic, though, of ancient aliens, but as you'll see, it ties into a number of other things like the flood and various other accounts, particularly in the book of Genesis. So looking forward to that. It's been a show I've been waiting for that just took me a little time to sort of get ready, and so I think I'm good to go. All right, well, I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. I'm going to take care of these cats here and get ready for my day, and I will see you all tomorrow for CW Jaw Talk 11. The book of Genesis. So, looking forward